After failing the interview, this inspiring employee shocked everyone. Her billionaire CEO's unexpected reaction will leave you speechless. Sarah sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. Her heart sank, not just because she had bombed the interview for a coveted position at Reyes Tech, but because the weight of her failure pressed heavily against the fragile dreams she held for her children and herself. At 34, she juggled the daily chaos of motherhood and a modest administrative job, always striving for more. Yet now, faced with the stark reflection of what could have been, despair seeped into her thoughts like a slow poison. The minute she walked into the sleek office building, she felt out of place, a small-town girl in a high-tech world that seemed to dismiss her before she even spoke. She had prepared for weeks, rehearsing answers to potential questions and crafting innovative ideas that could elevate the company. But as the billionaire Alex Reyes analyzed her with an impassive expression, she felt her argument crumble. "What do you even know about this industry?" His gaze seemed to question, echoing her own self-doubts. She left feeling dismissed, an echo of her upbringing in a community where people rarely escaped the clutches of economic limitations. Back home, the bills continued to multiply like weeds, threatening her carefully constructed life. In quiet moments, Sarah often found herself drowning in fear. What if her dreams were never meant to be? What if her children watched her struggle and concluded that aiming high was just an illusion? Those thoughts gnawed at her insides, creating an uneasy turmoil that made sleep a distant memory. Before she could succumb to despair, the voice of her grandmother floated through her mind, reminding her of resilience and integrity, principles that had weathered storms in their family's history. Inspired, Sarah poured her energy into something more substantial. What if she could transform her pain into purpose, helping young people in her town tackle the same obstacles she faced? A community job training initiative began to take shape, reconnecting her with her passion for mentoring while providing a lifeline for others. Just as enthusiasm surged in her project, fate dealt another card. Alex Reyes showed up at a local job fair, and Sarah's heart raced. Her body tensed as if preparing for battle. Fueled by a mix of determination and indignation, she confronted his views on economic disparity, the words tumbling out with ferocity. "You can't just wear a suit and preach innovation without understanding the real struggle, Alex," she shouted. And for a moment, the air crackled between them. His shock morphed into admiration, yet the effort left her shaken, grasping desperately to reclaim her composure. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The unexpected interaction ignited a spark, a potential mentorship that could redefine both of their paths. Yet Sarah's thoughts spiraled. How could she step into this world of corporate politics, rife with whispers of her past failure? As she prepared to present her revolutionary marketing strategy to Reyes Tech, her insecurities bubbled just beneath the surface. Each day felt like a tightrope walk, the distance between her modest beginnings and the stark reality of success stretching wider. Just as she began to open up, rumors of her past failure resurfaced, threatening to derail her progress. Would Alex see her as the industry outsider she feared to be? As tension mounted, an irreversible choice loomed over her, one that could either elevate her to new heights or send her crashing back into despair. With her future and dreams on the line, Sarah faced her most gut-wrenching challenge yet, leaving readers clinging to the edge of uncertainty, wondering if she could seize the opportunity or if her fears would become her undoing. As Sarah stood before the mirror, her reflection seemed foreign, almost daunting. The tailored suit she wore felt heavy, like a suit of armor meant for battle. Each button forced her to confront the details of her plan, Each wrinkle in the fabric mirrored the anxiety creasing her brow. She practiced her pitch again, the same words that had danced on the tip of her tongue when she faced Alex at the job fair. This time, they emerged with purpose, mixed with the fear that she might choke on them once more. The morning light streamed into her small living room, illuminating the chaos of her life. Toys lay scattered across the floor, intermingled with the remnants of yesterday's dinner that she hadn't yet cleaned up. This was her reality, a whirlwind of motherhood tangled with aspirations. Her children, oblivious to the struggle looming just beyond their conversational innocence, played quietly, their laughter cascading over her like a salve, but also a reminder of what her uphill battle meant. She could hear her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. "You must turn your pain into purpose, Sarah. Only you can shape your fate." That mantra had become both her shield and sword. On the drive to Reyes Tech, a cacophony of uncertainty rattled in her chest. Questions pinged relentlessly. What if the confidence she felt was merely a facade? What if Alex couldn't help but see through her? As she merged into the corporate artery of downtown, walls of glass towering above, she mentally calibrated her approach. Upon arriving, her heart raced not just from nerves, but excitement. Sarah took a breath, grounding herself as she stepped into the tech world that so intimidated her. It buzzed with intelligent conversations and creative energies, each desk a testimony to all the innovation that thrived. Yet she felt like an outsider, a mere spectator in a game she yearned to join. The expansive meeting room, designed to inspire brilliance, swallowed her whole as she entered. Her eyes flitted around the space, landing on Alex, who sat at the head of the sleek, glossy table, flanked by an array of sharp suits. The air thickened with tension as his gaze met hers, a flicker of recognition passing between them. She was no longer the frazzled mother, fueled solely by fear. She was prepared, an amalgam of passion and strategy. As she began her presentation, her voice wavered at first, threatening to give way to self-doubt, but memories of her children's faces ignited a fire within her. She recounted her vision for marketing, a story that connected with their customers at a deeper level, offering them not just services, but also solutions to the challenges they faced. With each word, she uncovered pieces of herself that she had long buried beneath layers of insecurity. Yet, with every confident assertion, whispers of her failure rose in the shadows of her mind. What if Alex dismissed her ideas as just another fantasy of a small-town girl, trying to break into a world that never had room for her? Suddenly, an unexpected question sliced through her presentation, one that left her momentarily stunned. "What's in it for Reyes Tech?" one of the executives asked, his tone both challenging and probing. Sarah felt a shift within her as the question echoed. This was a critical moment, not just for her presentation, but for her personal growth. Rather than retreat, she leaned into the challenge, channeling her passion into a response that was both thoughtful and assertive. "It's a chance to connect authentically with those who desperately need what we offer. It's about understanding community issues and making real differences in people's lives. That connection is what fuels loyalty and increases engagement." As she spoke, she sensed a shift in the room. Eyes widened, the tension eased, and Alex's expression transformed into something resembling intrigue. Today wasn't solely about proving her worth. It was about illuminating the path to possibilities for herself and others like her. She could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but more than that, she felt a surge of confidence rising within. This was her moment, not to seek acceptance, but to declare who she was. As questions continued to swirl, Sarah suddenly realized she wasn't waiting for validation. She was making a case for her dreams and those of others. Yet, as the final question dwindled, Sarah felt the moment shift. Would Alex choose to invest in her vision? Or would he revert to the safety of the conventional? Just as she thought she could exhale, she noticed the server enter the room, carrying a tablet with a screen flashing urgent news. an unexpected complication that could sway everything she had just laid on the table. The heartbeat of the room shifted once again, leaving Sarah teetering on the brink of uncertainty, her future hanging precariously in the balance. The hush that fell over the meeting room was palpable, transforming the air into a tight knot of anticipation. Sarah's eyes darted toward the screen, where the urgent news blared ominously. The headline revealed a corporate scandal involving a competitor, a disaster that could shift the dynamics of the entire industry. In that split second, the atmosphere morphed from focused evaluation into a charged alertness. Now what? Sarah thought, an alarming mix of dread and opportunity swirling in her gut. The executives muttered under their breath, some pulling out their phones, clearly distracted by the implications of what lay before them. Here she was, poised to present a vision of connection and community engagement. And now, a brutal shakeup hovered on the horizon. Doubt seeped in like a dark fog. Would they really heed her insights? Or would they retreat into the safe territory of damage control? Amid the murmurs, Sarah grasped the opportunity before her, a chance to pivot, to showcase her resilience amidst chaos. The weight of expectations clung heavier than before. She couldn't allow her moment to slip away due to external distractions. This could be her moment to shine, to prove she was indeed in touch with the pulse of the industry's needs. "Ladies and gentlemen," she interjected, her voice cutting through the murmurs with newfound determination. Every set of eyes turned back to her, surprised yet attentive. The news is significant and concerning, yes, but it also highlights the necessity for a brand that resonates with authenticity. While our competitors scramble to regain trust, Reyes Tech has a unique opportunity to redefine connections and realize what customer loyalty truly means. What we offer isn't merely a product. It's a promise of stability and trust, which is what people need now more than ever. She sensed the shift in energy, saw the flicker of recognition in Alex's gaze. This wasn't just about her presentation. It was about seizing the narrative when everything felt uncertain. Her heart raced again, but this time it wasn't solely out of fear. It was a vibrant pulse of resolve. She was stepping into the driving seat of her own narrative. The executive who had posed the challenging question leaned forward, curiosity shining in his eyes. "How exactly do you suggest we navigate this situation with our customers? What does that look like in practical terms?" This was her chance to weave her strategies into a living, breathing plan. "We begin by engaging our customer base directly. Use social media not just as a messaging channel, but as a space for dialogue. Let them ask questions, express their concerns. Then we develop a campaign that directly addresses their fears while showcasing our competitive advantages." Each point she made carried her conviction, bolstered by the knowledge that she had survived a lifetime of uncertainty. The struggles of motherhood, the ambivalence of her career. As she concluded her thoughts, she became hyper-aware of the urgency that hung around her. These executives weren't just assessing her ideas. They were feeling the gravity of the situation. And within this tension, Sarah discovered a profound strength. Perhaps her vision could carve a path forward in an industry dominated by giants. Maybe, just maybe, she could be an architect of their rebirth. A silence enveloped the room after she finished, but to Sarah, the silence was alive, electric with possibility. Alex stood appearing thoughtful, a rarity in the boardroom where he typically projected assurance. Her pulse quickened again. She could feel the weight on his shoulders. This was no longer just an evaluation of her pitch, but a critical moment for the entire company. Just as Alex began to speak, Sarah's senses heightened. She had not merely presented to him. She had ignited a conversation about navigating uncertainty with grace and purpose. Would he see her potential and champion her ideas? Or would this moment spiral into an analysis of what they had lost? In that heartbeat, she decided one thing: win or lose. She would enter this new terrain with her eyes wide open. The world often asked her to shrink and conform, but here, armed with insights and resilience, She refused to play small. Sarah could feel the gathering storm inside her, ready to face whatever came next. And just as Alex began to articulate a decision, the door flew open. A newcomer burst into the room, an unexpected player from the corporate ranks, holding a crucial piece of intelligence that could reshape everything they had just considered. Sarah's heart raced anew, knowing this could either validate her vision or unravel it in an instant. The newcomer, dressed sharply in a tailored suit that exuded authority, stood panting at the doorway. Sarah's heart sank momentarily. This sudden interruption felt like a precarious balancing act on the edge of a cliff. Feeling every scrutinizing gaze on her, she forced herself to focus on the individual now invading the space she so desperately sought to command. "Apologies for the intrusion," the newcomer announced, projecting an urgency that immediately captured the attention of the room. "I have information regarding the situation at Luxor Industries, critical intel that addresses our competitors' failings and their impact on market trust." The name echoed in Sarah's mind. Luxor, rumored to be sinking under the weight of its scandals. Sarah's pulse raced. This was her moment to harness the conflict swirling around the presentation. She sensed the executives repositioning themselves, bustling to absorb the sudden shift in focus. The newcomer had disrupted their moment of reflection, but it also opened up a broader dialogue, the very kind Sarah had intended to create. "Let's hear it," Alex urged, his keen eyes shifting between the newcomer and Sarah, as if sensing the raw potential of the collision between their ideas. Luxor has lost contracts worth millions, but more importantly, their target demographics are expressing a loss of faith. Customers feel abandoned. Our competitors aren't just struggling to manage existing backlash. They're alienating future prospects by failing to address the core issues that led to the scandal, the newcomer continued, scanning the room to gauge reactions. In that instant, Sarah recognized an opportunity beneath swirling chaos. The newcomer had inadvertently fed into her message about resonance and authenticity, the principles that needed to underpin every interaction the brand would have moving forward. She proposed the audience ground their concerns and fears in the reality of their rivals' shortcomings. "Exactly," Sarah interjected, her voice rising again, fueled with newfound energy. "That sense of abandonment among consumers is what we must address immediately. Our strategy could shine a spotlight on how Reyes Tech stands in direct contrast to Luxor's failures. We can become the sanctuary that consumers flock to. But we must act swiftly and transparently." The executive seemed to lean into her words as an idea unfurled in her mind, a concept almost palpable in its clarity. Imagine a campaign celebrating customer stories, showcasing not just our products but also our commitment to their future. Capture testimonials highlighting how Reyes Tech doesn't merely promise, we deliver through our actions. The message can be unified. While others falter, we stand committed to our community. She sensed Alex nodding thoughtfully, an indication her vision was resonating. Conversations erupted around the room as other executives began to voice their opinions on how her proposal could evolve or what steps they should consider next. Sarah felt exhilarated. Her pitch had pivoted from a lone voice against a daunting backdrop to a collective vision erupting from the uncertainty. Yet in the midst of the discussions, she felt a familiar sense of unease creeping back. The strategy might promise rewards, but only if it was executed flawlessly and genuinely. The stakes were higher than she ever anticipated, and the air in the room, crackling with excitement, gnawed at the foundation of her confidence. As they strategized, she realized this could be her defining moment, a chance to lead, to carve a new identity for not just the firm, but for herself. The voice of her past echoed in her mind, questioning her readiness for such responsibility. Could she truly be a change-maker? Or would the weight of expectation crush her before she even stepped onto that path? Let's not just react. Let's define who we are in contrast to Luxor. I'm ready to take the lead in developing this campaign, she declared, the words spilling from her in an impulsive surge. Silence blanketed the room again, this time heavier, as uncertainty nestled itself within her bold assertion. Could she shoulder this responsibility? Would they trust her to steer their ship in uncharted waters promoted by corporate upheaval? Just then, Alex's phone buzzed again, momentarily pulling him back to the unsettling reality outside the walls of the meeting room. We need to decide fast. If we want to position ourselves or take advantage of this unfolding situation, we can't hesitate. Sarah felt the tension tightening around her. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, a pivotal moment that could either elevate her career or ground it in failure. There was no turning back now. The decision made wasn't just about the company's future. It was a test of her potential. And as Alex continued to scroll through the emails, one alarming message pulled his attention grave enough to warrant shared dread across the room. It seems Luxor isn't just fading. They're about to launch an aggressive counter-campaign that could change everything overnight. Sarah's heart raced anew. The time had come for her to face the storm brewing before them, a confrontation not only with the external challenges, but with her own deepest fears. Would she falter under the weight of this revelation, or would she rise to meet it head-on? The pulse of the meeting room thumped with electric uncertainty, echoing Sarah's own racing thoughts. Everyone around her, once office warriors cloaked in professional responsibility, appeared transformed into anxious strategists, desperate to seize the moment before it slipped away. The unexpected news about Luxor's counter-campaign weighed heavily on her mind. Was she prepared for this battle? Sarah. Alex's voice sliced through her spiraling thoughts. If we're going to mobilize our resources, we need an actionable plan. Can you start drafting a timeline for our campaign rollout? The pressure of his request clawed at her resolve. Absolutely, she replied, but doubt lingered, gnawing at her confidence. She envisioned the timeline, a series of deadlines intertwined with expectations. Each tick of the clock would amplify her responsibility. But she felt the dawn of purpose amid that disquiet. Her hands trembled slightly as she began jotting down notes, her thoughts coalescing into a path forward. We need to establish clear goals within the first week, gather data from customer insights, draft promotional materials, and align our messaging. Tight timelines require bold actions. Yes, Alex affirmed, the intensity in his eyes a mixture of urgency and faith. We must also reassess our digital channels. If Luxor targets online consumers aggressively, we need to dominate conversations before they hijack the narrative. With that pivot towards action, Sarah pushed her self-doubt into the recess of her mind, forcing it to contend with a growing sense of clarity. She needed to step into the light she had only previously admired from afar. The more she strategized, the more she uncovered an inner strength, an unyielding determination rising from the depths of uncertainty. Let's create content that speaks directly to our values, she suggested, emboldened by the team's interest. Customer stories paired with behind-the-scenes footage can build connections that Luxor can't compete with. We need to be authentic. It's our secret weapon. The tone in the room shifted, a collective forge of ideas shaping her initial impulsive suggestions into concrete plans. But then, introspective questions crept into her mind. What if her ideas crumbled under the weight of execution? Could she truly lead them through challenges she had never encountered? Doubt threatened to rebound. Let's test our ideas, Alex proposed, grounding Sarah's frenetic thoughts. I want immediate focus groups. We'll quickly gauge consumer sentiment on our messaging versus Luxor's approach. Time is of the essence. Nods of agreement brought her focus back to reinforcing bonds with their customer base, yet a flicker of apprehension lingered. What if the feedback was mixed? Would it fracture her emerging leadership? Sarah leaned into her notebook, flipping the pages frantically, grounding herself with logistics she could control. But we have to be prepared for backlash too, another executive chimed in. What if Luxor fights back with a dirty tactic? We can't be blindsided. Sarah's heart sank anew. The pressures of corporate warfare weighed heavily on her shoulders. What if they were blindsided? The reality of the corporate battlefield was brutal, but her resolve hardened. If she faltered in her strategic planning, the very foundation of her expertise would be questioned. "We can brace for impact through readiness," she countered, steadying her voice. "Let's establish a crisis communication plan. We must anticipate potential fallout, ensuring we're not just reacting but proactively shaping responses." As discussions swirled around her, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Leadership wasn't just about appreciation. It required resilience through chaos. The disconnect from her past self, an employee hesitant to raise her voice, felt tangible. Here she was, crafting a lifeline for her team while grappling with her own inner voice, which echoed fears louder than ever. Suddenly, another notification buzzed from Alex's phone. He read the message, his expression suddenly grave, and breathed out, "It seems there's been a leak of our strategy documents. We must act fast or risk the integrity of our campaign." The atmosphere metamorphosed into one of urgency, a new weight pressing upon Sarah's emerging identity. Here she stood, ready to lead, but now faced with a potential moment of exposure. Would she identify the leaker amidst this corporate storm? The tension hung thick as she considered the implications of such betrayal. As the room erupted into frantic conversation, Sarah felt the duality of her trajectory. She was the very center of this storm, the battleground of her strength and vulnerabilities. Would she emerge shattered, or forged anew in the fires of conflict? With that thought crystallizing, her gaze hardened, setting her jaw in determination. Each choice from this moment forward was a step toward defining not only the company's strategy, but her very identity as a leader. She took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever shadows awaited her. And just then, wars of loyalty and trust surfaced in her mind. The larger battle was only beginning, and Sarah knew now. The tides would test her, perhaps in ways she had yet to imagine. Would she rise to meet those challenges, or would she surrender to the chaos? In the midst of the escalating tension, Sarah felt the temperature in the room escalate along with her heart rate. The powerful scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted in from the break room, yet it did nothing to soothe her racing thoughts. She had entered this meeting expecting to refine a vision. Now she was navigating a crisis that threatened not only her campaign, but her credibility as a leader. "I need everyone's focus right now," she asserted, her voice cutting through the clamor that threatened to consume the room. "Our first step must be damage control. We can't afford to let our competitors steer the conversation. And we certainly cannot let our internal trust erode." The group hushed, eyes turning toward her, some uncertain, others expecting. For the first time, doubt began to fade. This was her moment, not just to react, but to demonstrate her capability. She could feel the quickening pulse of potential within her, a realization that her stance could dictate the pace for those around her. "First, let's identify the leak. We'll need to conduct a full audit of our document security," she continued, her mind racing to potential triage systems. Who had access to that document? And how could it have been exposed? Each question felt like a stepping stone into her development as a leader, navigating the murky waters, threatening to drown her confidence, yet also presenting an opportunity to prove herself. As she mapped out her action plan, doubts crept in again. What if she was overstepping? What if the leak was a malicious insider? A shiver coursed through her, the darkness of betrayal a heavy cloak upon her shoulders. But even as those thoughts bubbled, she pushed them down. Leadership required confronting vulnerability. "Sarah," Alex interjected, drawing her from her thoughts. "That's a solid plan, but we might need an outside consultant to streamline this process. We can't risk delays." As he spoke, another restless impulse sparked within her. "No," she responded, her tone more assertive than she had intended. "We have the expertise here. I know our systems inside and out, and I want to lead the investigation myself." This proclamation felt like a public claiming of her growth, her want to step up in a way she never had before, to commit to the very responsibilities she had always tiptoed around. The room remained quiet. Did they doubt her? She wondered. Or was it an acknowledgement of her journey, a transition from a submissive role into that of a captain sailing into raging waters? Her heartbeat drummed louder as she continued speaking, her ideas flowing more freely. Let's have a retrospective analysis of our strategy in tandem with the security measures. Learning from this leak will help us evolve. The better we understand our vulnerabilities, the stronger we will be going forward. A wave of determination coursed through her as she saw their expressions shift. Awareness and realization flickered on their faces, mirroring her internal metamorphosis. She was carving her identity amid chaos, and they seemed to recognize her journey. Set up the details for tomorrow's meeting, she ordered, her voice resonating with newfound authority. We'll review our internal controls, review personnel, and dissect our vulnerabilities. Trust begins with us, and we'll create an environment where everyone feels secure. The crowd nodded, the cadence of their commitment palpable. Yet, even as the meeting progressed, a chilling thought caught her. Leadership required more than strategic solutions. It demanded an understanding of fractures beneath the surface, the ones even she might unknowingly be creating. What if loyalty tested her resolve? What if betrayal lurked just around the corner? Each moment added layers to her developing sense of self, requiring her to reconcile ambition with vulnerability. The essence of leadership. The scarier it became, the stronger she needed to be. As the meeting concluded, Sarah left with a heavy heart but a determined mind. She realized she had taken her first real step into leadership, still uncertain, but undeniably braver. It was time to confront the shadows lurking in her own organization, not just to answer the questions posed by Luxor, but to face the whispers within her own team. This was her crucible. The tests were only beginning, and she knew soon she would face more than just the threat from their competitor. Would she be prepared for the more profound battles that awaited her? Battles not only of strategy, but of moral integrity within her ranks. Would she emerge not just as a campaign leader, but as an irreplaceable force of fortitude? As Sarah left the meeting room, the echo of her own voice still rang in her ears. Each step toward her office felt heavier than the last, as the gravity of her leadership role weighed increasingly on her shoulders. This wasn't just a campaign. It was a test of her character and resolve. She had made a stand, yet the shadows of doubt loomed larger than ever. What if her next decisions drew the ire of the very team she sought to empower? Once ensconced in her office, she absorbed the quiet, the silence contrasting sharply with the chaos of the meeting. The walls, lined with accolades and reminders of past successes, now felt like a gallery of expectations. Seeking clarity, she pulled a notebook from her desk, a habit she had cultivated during moments of uncertainty. Writing had always helped her unravel the web of her thoughts, and today was no different. Identify the leak, she scribbled, underlining it with fervor, as if playing it out on the page might conjure the answers she needed. She needed to infiltrate the mind of her team, read between the lines of their behaviors and interactions. Had anyone seemed off lately? Were they whispering conspiratorially? The inner turmoil of betrayal was not to be underestimated, but she refused to let fear paralyze her. Going through lists of her team members, Sarah thought about their strengths and weaknesses. She wondered, who among them had the potential to both help and harm? This investigation wouldn't merely reveal the external threats. It would also shine a spotlight on the dynamics within her organization. That was a daunting prospect, presuming there were fractures to mend or egos to massage. Then, something flickered in the corner of her mind, an encounter from the previous week. During a late-night session sorting through the department's project files, she had caught a glimpse of Jerry's shadowy silhouette lingering by the exit. Was he leaving? Or was he simply lost in a labyrinth of his own thoughts? There it was, a nugget of suspicion lodged firmly in her mind, but she brushed it aside for the moment. She couldn't let paranoia guide her. Mistrust could be as perilous as the leak itself. As she began to design an investigative plan, a sudden knock on her door jolted her from her reverie. It was Alex, his brows knitted with concern. "Sarah, can we talk?" "Of course." She motioned for him to enter, curiosity piqued. Alex had been a steadfast ally, but his gaze suggested more than routine business. "About the plan," he started hesitantly. "I have some reservations, not just about the investigation itself, but about you leading it." Each word punctuated the uncertainty swirling inside her already shaken composure. "What do you mean?" "I believe in your vision. You have a gut for strategy. But the team's morale might take a hit if they see you dissecting trust issues. It can make you seem antagonistic," he explained, standing just a bit taller as if steel casting his own spine. "Have you thought about the impact this might have on your relationships?" His honesty resonated painfully. Leadership demanded a balance of authority and compassion. The path hadn't just been about claiming power, it was also about creating a foundation of safety for her team. "Are you suggesting I step back?" It stung more than she expected, the idea feeling like a retreat. "Not stepping back, but stepping sideways, maybe. A collaborative investigation? Strengthening the team through this crisis instead of launching an autopsy?" She considered his words, her pulse racing anew. Was this the vulnerable evolution required to lead effectively? Relationships forged through shared endeavors could fortify them against both external threats and internal uncertainty. The idea began to take root, but Sarah remained wary. Alex was right. Trust had to be at the forefront, not buried beneath layers of investigation. Would that be enough to drive out disloyalty if it existed? "Okay, let's approach this together," she finally relented, the resolve building in her voice. "We'll involve the whole team. Transparency will be our shield." As they discussed how to frame the investigation's intent as a means of growth and unity, Sarah's confidence surged. They would reclaim the narrative, invoking collective strength rather than dissecting individually. But even as she maneuvered through this shift, apprehension gnawed at her core. The journey ahead was nascent, and the shadows still lingered. Confronting potential unwanted truths loomed at the edges, like a storm on the horizon. Would the team rise to meet the challenge? Or would her new approach expose deeper fractures, ones that could threaten the very foundation she was striving to build? As Sarah and Alex crafted their plan, an undercurrent of excitement mingled with tension hung in the air. Sarah wrestled with her earlier uncertainty, questioning the very foundations of her leadership. She needed assurance that this collaborative approach wouldn't just bolster her team's trust, but also strengthen her own confidence as a leader. The plan couldn't just succeed, it had to resonate with every individual involved. The following day, Sarah gathered her team for an all-hands meeting. She could feel the weight of their gaze, each person's scrutiny tangible as they filed into the room. The conference table, once a landscape of division, became a platform for transparency. She greeted them with a warm smile, though beneath it, doubt battled her nerves. Could she genuinely foster a collaborative spirit amidst growing distrust? "Team," Sarah began, her voice steadying as she glanced around the room. "I want to talk about our project and some challenges we've faced recently. There's been some concern that our goals haven't aligned as clearly as they should." She observed the mix of expressions, confusion, curiosity, and perhaps, among a few, wariness. This was not just a conversation, it was a pivotal moment in shifting the environment of their workspace. "Instead of addressing these issues unilaterally, I believe it's crucial for all of us to engage in this conversation together," Sarah said, measuring her words. "I want to hear your thoughts, your ideas. Let's build trust and a shared vision." Tentative nods encouraged her, igniting a flicker of hope. But she needed more than nods. She wanted genuine engagement. With Alex at her side, they facilitated an open discussion, encouraging team members to voice their concerns and ambitions. The atmosphere gradually transformed from trepidation to enthusiasm, ideas bouncing among them. Yet as discussions gained momentum, one voice cut through, the sound of apprehension. Is this just a way to cover up what's really happening? Jerry's tone was laced with skepticism, pushing against the walls of trust they were trying to erect. Sarah's heart raced, but she remained composed. Here lay the critical moment. Would her forthrightness disarm him or invite further resistance? Jerry, I completely understand your concern. It isn't about masking issues. It's about confronting them as a team. Every voice here matters, she replied, her gaze anchored in his. He studied her, and for a moment, she feared the worst, that he would pull away, sowing further discord. Yet instead, a flicker of acknowledgement flickered in his eyes. Okay, he said, his defenses lowering slightly. But what if we find more than just misalignment? What if someone's purposefully going against the team? The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken fears surfacing. Sarah felt the weight of each member's anxiety pressing down. Moments like these tested her resolve, challenging her to control the narrative. This is the risk of transparency, Sarah admitted, her voice steady but vulnerable. We might uncover uncomfortable truths. However, it's better we face them together than let them fester unseen. Trust isn't built overnight. It's forged in the fires of honesty. With that, the dialogue shifted fundamentally. Courage began to permeate their discussions. They addressed issues openly, discomfort over workloads, conflicting priorities, even personal grievances. Sarah felt a profound shift, as if barriers were dissolving, creating clearer paths for collaboration. After the meeting, Sarah lingered, her thoughts racing. The discussions hadn't just opened the floor to potential issues. They had activated her realization. The path to effective leadership lay not in authority, but in shared vulnerability. She had crossed a threshold, stepping out of her own shadow. But in this stride, she had also uncovered layers of complexity she hadn't anticipated. Deep-rooted frustrations, aspirations unvoiced, and yes, potential betrayal. As she sat reflecting, Alex's voice drew her back to the moment. You handled that well, he said, admiration evident in his tone. But are you ready for what's next? The truth is we might not have diffused all the tension yet. Sarah's heart sank slightly, the gravity of that truth resonating with unsettling clarity. Could they really integrate these truths into their workflow? Was she prepared to navigate the fallout of deeper issues? As she leaned back in her chair, the uncertainty felt heavier than it had before. She had opened doors, but she was now bracing for the consequences that came with stepping through them. It was supposed to be a move towards collaboration. Instead, it might well lead her to the very heart of betrayal. The storm was still brewing. What lay beyond those doors? Would they stand united? Or would this journey reveal deeper fractures that could threaten everything she had worked to build? The week following the team meeting unfolded with an air of cautious optimism, but beneath the surface, the tensions remained palpable. Sarah invested time in one-on-one conversations, eager to understand her team members better without the backdrop of their peers. Each discussion revealed layers of complexity, concerns about workload, unexpressed ambitions, and hints of resentment brewing over past decisions that had sidelined certain voices. During lunch with Emily, a junior team member who had once seemed disengaged, Sarah found an opening. Emily spoke hesitantly at first about feeling overlooked during project decisions. As she spoke, Sarah entered a world of eye-opening realizations. She listened intently, not merely processing Emily's words, but also reflecting on her own blind spots. A sense of urgency took root in her chest. This was no longer just a conversation about team dynamics. It was personal growth at stake. Your perspective is so important, Emily, Sarah said, sensing that the shift in her leadership style wasn't just about fostering collaboration. It was about recognizing stories that hadn't been told. How can we ensure you feel more included moving forward? Emily's eyes lit up as she articulated her need for greater responsibility, for ownership over tasks rather than merely following directives. Each revelation from her resonated with unspoken truths echoed by others. Sarah pondered whether she had been too caught up in maintaining order at the expense of making space for diverse contributions. After their lunch, Sarah convened a quick follow-up with Alex, sharing the insights she'd gathered. "I think we've been focusing too much on what's wrong, and not enough on the silent voices that need to be raised," she suggested, a new resolve shining through. "If we can create a culture where everyone can contribute ideas, it might empower people to come forward with their concerns, instead of burying them." Alex nodded, impressed not just with her insights, but at how these conversations had radically transformed her perspective on leadership. "It seems you're not just leading your team, you're nurturing their growth as well," he said. "That's the mark of an exceptional leader." With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah addressed the entire team again, this time opening the floor for what she termed a collaboration workshop. It was less of a meeting and more of an exploration, a brainstorming session where she encouraged everyone to pin their thoughts and frustrations on a wall, a physical representation of their internal struggles. As ideas flowed and discussions flourished, Sarah wove personal stories into the fabric of their collective aspirations. There were flashes of vulnerability that illuminated her own fledgling path as a leader. She surprised herself when she shared a past failure, a moment that she had long regarded as a mark of shame. In doing so, she liberated her team from the burden of perfectionism. However, amidst the openness, Jerry remained distant, brooding at the edge of the table, arms folded tightly across his chest. The tension grew like a storm cloud, darkening the room's atmosphere. He voiced a question linked to trust, calling for clarity regarding roles, responsibilities, and the boundaries of accountability. How do we know we can truly rely on each other? This confrontation anchored Sarah in her purpose. Trust takes time to build, and it requires us to show our vulnerabilities as much as our strengths. We can't shy away from discussing accountability. We have each other's backs, and with that, I'm committed to clarifying roles moving forward. After the session, as team members departed with a rediscovered sense of engagement, Sarah's heart raced. She had navigated shared vulnerabilities, but the cloud of Jerry's skepticism lingered heavy in her thoughts. Would their newfound openness withstand scrutiny? Retreating to her office, she pondered whether she was prepared to confront Jerry's doubts directly. What could he reveal that could either undermine their collaborative momentum or be the key to finally uniting the team? The implications were daunting, yet she realized that not addressing these issues head-on could jeopardize all that she had worked to achieve. Steeling herself, she resolved to seek Jerry out for a candid conversation. The time had come to face the remaining fissures threatening to fracture their collective resolve. Would she be able to gain his trust and turn his skepticism into support? Or would this confrontation fracture the fragile bonds she had so carefully woven? As Sarah approached Jerry's desk, the hum of office chatter faded, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She could see him working furiously, the tension in his posture highlighting the unease that had lingered since the meeting. Today was not just about confronting his doubts. It was about confronting her own fears and solidifying her growth as a leader. "Hey, Jerry," she started, trying to sound casual, but she could feel the weight of the conversation ahead. He looked up, surprise written across his face, but the guarded expression remained. "Hi, Sarah. I'd like to talk if you have a minute. It's important." With a slight nod, he reluctantly pushed his papers aside. As they settled into a quiet corner, Sarah was acutely aware of the gravity in the air. This conversation could either draw them closer or completely unravel the progress they had made as a team. "I wanted to follow up on what you said during the workshop about trust and accountability. I understand that there are concerns. I want you to know that your voice matters here," she began, seeking to include him rather than alienate him further. Jerry looked skeptical. "It's not just about me, Sarah. It's everyone. We're just expected to trust you and the management without knowing we won't get sidelined. I've been burned before." His candidness struck a chord. Sarah nodded, realizing that she too had experienced that same disillusionment. I've felt that way before too. That's why I want to create a space where we can openly express our vulnerabilities, because we can't grow without trust. His furrowed brow softened slightly, yet the skepticism hung in the balance. Maybe, but what's going to happen when the real decisions are made? When it comes down to it, who will actually listen to us? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination. I'm committed to ensuring every voice is heard, including yours. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I need your perspective to help guide our journey. Together, we can shape a strategy that reflects our collective vision, and not just the directives from the top. Silence fell upon them for a moment. Sarah's heart raced, sensing a critical turning point. Would he let her in past the walls of distrust? I understand that you're passionate about what we're building, but are you really ready to fight for it? I don't want lip service. I want action, he replied, his steel-nerved gaze meeting hers. In that moment, Sarah realized what she needed to demonstrate. Yes, Jerry, action is key. I am ready. I'll put a system in place for team feedback and we'll advocate for our voices in board meetings. I won't shy away from consequences if it helps us all. His expression softened further at the sight of her conviction. If you plan to oversee that, count me in. But I want accountability woven into that system. A real structure. Absolutely, she said, feeling the swell of confidence in her voice. This is a partnership. I want you to help design that structure. Your insights could be the cornerstone of our transformation. With a hesitant flicker of acceptance, Jerry nodded. All right then, let's see where this goes. Relief washed over Sarah as their conversation shifted from uncertainty to collaboration. This exchange had not just tested her resolve. It cemented her growth as a leader willing to confront adversity and inspire others to do the same. She would face challenges head-on, and in so doing, she would elevate others along the way. Over the following weeks, Sarah's leadership took shape in ways that made her realize how deeply interconnected trust and accountability were to success. She designed accountability frameworks that not only fostered clarity, but also celebrated shared achievements. Jerry became an essential ally in this venture, his insights ensuring that the team felt respected and engaged. Amid strategies and implementation plans, Sarah also witnessed transformation among her team. They developed a rhythm of assistance and mentorship. Conversations evolved from mere updates to strategies infused with candidness and creativity, and importantly, to community among colleagues. One afternoon, as they prepared for a significant client presentation, Sarah found the team rallying around her. It was a tangible representation of their collective growth. Remember, she told them, this isn't just about selling a service. It's about delivering value. And that value is rooted in our shared vision. As they dove into the presentation, Sarah felt buoyed by the trust they had built together. The energy was infectious, transforming anxiety into enthusiasm as they captivated their audience with innovative ideas, harnessing insights drawn from Jerry's earlier skepticism into strategies that reinforced not only accountability, but also authenticity. When the presentation concluded, applause erupted from the client and their team, accolades showered over her like a victory banner. Looking around the room, she found not just her own pride ignited, but a realization that each individual had contributed to this success, bridging their unique strengths under a shared purpose. Days later, as she received recognition during a quarterly meeting for her significant impact, a gratifying sense of accomplishment surged through her. This recognition was not just her own. It signified the transformation her leadership had catalyzed within her team. Reflecting on her journey from self-doubt to empowerment felt monumental. Sarah had demonstrated that resilience, when paired with vulnerability, could yield connections that fortified friendships, alliances, and successes. She was no longer weighed down by failure. She had conquered her fears and emerged confident in who she was. A leader capable of transforming not only her environment, but also her destiny. The lesson burned bright within her, that leaning into discomfort could uncover latent potential, both in herself and her team. "I am ready for whatever comes next," she whispered to herself, empowered by the strength she felt coursing through her. This transformative journey had redefined her path, fostering growth from adversity, not just for her own progress, but for every individual she led. No longer a small-town girl on the periphery of tech, she had established her position firmly at a table of innovation and influence. Now this is where you come in. You need to subscribe immediately to follow along on more inspiring journeys like Sarah's. Don't wait, even one more second. Leave a like to show your support. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Sarah's transformation. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need a reminder that they too can achieve their dreams. Your engagement keeps this channel alive. Be part of a community that values personal growth and empowerment. Let's spread the inspiration far and wide. Our aim.